Hello and welcome to the SolarWinds MSP Ransomware Protection webinar series. This is part 2 titled Ready for Recovery. My name is Eric Harless. I'm a Senior Product Manager with SolarWinds MSP with responsibilities for SolarWinds backup and recovery products. This is a two-part webinar series. Today we'll cover part 2, Ready for Recovery. Previously, in part 1, you learned about the ransomware threat, the different types of ransomware. We discussed if backup really is enough when it comes to ransomware protection. Finally, we concluded with the 5 steps to ransomware protection, of which backup is just one component, albeit the last line of defense. Today, we will do a little recap and then dive deeper into the methodologies and features within SolarWinds Backup that help to ensure recovery from ransomware. We will look at some examples of data loss due to ransomware. We will discuss proper planning, preparation, and testing to ensure recovery from ransomware. And finally, we'll look at factors involved in determining whether to pay a ransom or recover from backup. As a quick refresher, we discussed previously that backup is your last line of defense against ransomware, and that it is best combined with a multi-layered approach that includes user education and restricted access to non-essential systems, resources, and data. We encourage you to institute prevention measures such as antivirus, anti-malware, patch, and web security tools. When all else fails, you need to ensure that backup and recovery tools are in place and backups are actively monitored and tested. And finally, we recommended that strong firewalls and network security implementations be made, along with vulnerability auditing and risk assessment to understand what vulnerabilities and risks exist so they can be corrected later. Step 5 was all about backup and recovery. Backup, as I said, is your last line of defense, meaning it is likely your last option if steps 1 through 4 have failed and you need to restore data. The key takeaways were making sure that you back up the right data. If you don't protect it, you can't restore it. Replication, sync and share, local VSS or VM snapshots are often not enough, and they can be easily deleted by ransomware. Make sure that you maintain off-site or cloud copies of your backup data. If the local copy is encrypted or destroyed, then you can still have that off-site copy to recover from. Restrict user access to the backup application and any local or network data repositories. Regularly test your backups and restores to ensure that you know you're protected and understand the recovery process. So ransomware is big enough to make headlines. All verticals are impacted, and here are 4 fairly recent examples. Government. Early last year, the city of Durham, North Carolina reported that they had avoided the ransomware threat with good backups. Now, this is a rare hero headline. You don't see this very often. Most of the time, it's going to talk about the type of threat and the amount of money or Bitcoin that it cost them to get access to their data. So you won't see this very often, but I wanted to have this here because this is right in my backyard. On the healthcare front, February 2016 example, here we had a crippled hospital in California. Where was their backup? $17,000 in Bitcoin, 2 hackers, FBI investigating, tax dollars at work, and ultimately this could have all been saved with a good backup. Education. So June 2016, university pays $20,000 to ransomware hackers. Once again, where was the backup? Why was no backup in place that could have allowed them to recover this data and not forego $20,000 in taxpayer dollars or tuition hikes? Finally, May 2017, now this is a global attack. This was the impact or fallout from the WannaCry variant of ransomware. It impacted nearly 100 countries and 45,000 systems. Now, hopefully these people had backups in place. Now, many of those organizations probably had a backup, but was it a good backup? When was it last ran? When was it last successful? Were they protecting the right files, volumes, or shares that were impacted by the ransomware? How far back could they go? Do they retain backups and archived copies from before the infection? So we'll show you in a few moments where you can make selections within SolarWinds Backup and how you can monitor successful backups, how you go about setting or extending retention, and even how you go about doing or performing a test restore. Many consumers and small businesses incorrectly assume that because they have sync and share applications like Google Drive, that they have backups. In reality, these types of applications are susceptible to the same types of deletions, corruptions, and encryptions that impact production data. Even with versioning, these applications aren't really designed for mass restores of a single point in time, and normally only a subset of data is actually synchronized up to the cloud. Now, SolarWinds Backup retains multiple point-in-time versions of your selected data, any of which can be restored back to the original or an alternate location. If they were relying on native local backup solutions or VSS or virtual machine snapshots, well, those are some of the first backups that get damaged or deleted when ransomware takes hold. Now, backup data on a local volume or USB drive, an unsecured NAS, or a network share can be encrypted right alongside that production data, and it often is. To really be protected, you need an offsite copy. SolarWinds Backup is a hybrid cloud backup and recovery solution. We require a cloud copy of your data to ensure offsite protection, but we also allow you to define an optional local repository called the Local Speed Vault, which is a secure local mirror of your data stored in the cloud. The Local Speed Vault improves redundancy, and it can significantly increase restore speeds, effectively allowing recovery at LAN speed instead of WAN speed. This could mean the difference of a 1-hour recovery versus a 4-hour or 48-hour recovery, of course, depending on local network speeds, WAN speeds, and the ultimate size of the recovery. You might ask yourself, did I back up the right data? Well, it's all about making the right selections. Just because you're running a backup, it doesn't mean that you're protecting the right data. To have successful recoveries, you need to ensure that you're protecting the right data, the right systems, the right configurations. Now, we provide you several ways to ensure that you've made the right selections with SolarWinds Backup. First is by defining profiles or policies. Profiles allow you to choose a default data selection set and set filters and exclusions. You can also set default backup schedules and default local storage locations. Profiles can even be applied automatically during device deployment, so new systems never have to be without a backup because they were overlooked. Secondly, you can send remote commands to set selections and exclusions for one or more devices right from the management console. Note, this option is not available to SolarWinds RMM users with integrated backup, but it is available for standalone backup users and Essential integrated users. Finally, you can make individual selections by locally or remotely launching the Backup Manager and choosing what data you want to protect. Now, if you don't select the data for backup, it won't be available for restore, and that's kind of obvious, but mistakes happen. You need to confirm that you have the data you need. If you want to perform a bare metal recovery or virtual recovery, you're going to need to ensure that you've at least selected the system volumes and the system state at a minimum. But you would also want to select data volumes, application volumes, if you mean to restore them later. Also, selections don't help if you don't create a backup schedule. So while you're using any of these three options, remember to add a schedule to the profile, set a schedule via remote command, or create a schedule while interacting with the Backup Manager directly. Finally, because things can and do change, set a reminder in your calendar to come back at regular intervals to see if you need to modify the selection list, and take the opportunity to get your customers involved. Let's talk about securing the client. As you've learned, restricting access to backup settings and backup repositories can be important. Now that you have selections and schedules, you might want to now consider preventing your users from being able to make changes on the local client to include or exclude data, or modify or remove schedules. You have two options available to you. If you created and applied profiles previously, then all of those settings are automatically restricted from being modified at the backup client level. You'll note the little padlocks next to various profile settings on the backup client. Alternately, if you aren't using profiles or you simply want to restrict access to the entire backup client, then you can issue a remote command from the management console to set a GUI password for one or more backup manager clients. Now note, this option is not available for our SolarWinds RMM users with integrated backup, but it is available for standalone backup users and Essential integrated users. Later, when you go to launch the Backup Manager locally or remotely, you'll be prompted with the GUI password. Optionally, you can set restore only access for users that you do want to have the ability to do self-service restores. What about monitoring your backups? Well, you and your technician can probably keep track of a handful of system backups, but at some point in this business, you will have too many systems to monitor and track individually. Leveraging our web-based management console at backup.management to centrally monitor your backups is a great idea. Note, this is not a feature that is available to SolarWinds RMM and Essential users of the integrated backup product. Refer to your integrated console for all reporting and monitoring for those versions. The ability to manage by exception is a great advantage of this console. It allows you to see just the systems that you want to see. You've got the ability to track your success over time, monitor based on size or duration, filter by partner, location, size, operating system, etc. And you can take these settings and save them, save the filters, the views, so that these problem systems are easily identified, and then those views can automatically show up in your email inbox on a recurring schedule. With this data at your fingertips and in your inbox, you should never again wonder if systems are protected and when the last successful backup is. Now, if you have the time, the detailed backup history is a great component of the management console. It contains a wealth of detailed information. You can use it to monitor for irregularities and fine-tune your backups. It is a way to easily identify underperforming systems, to see spikes in your backup durations, to look at the number of changed or removed files, or look for significant increases or decreases in selected or transferred size. Now, there might be nothing to it. Maybe it's just new data or regular system or application updates, but it could also be related to changes caused by malware. Even retroactively, this data is useful to see when malware first struck, how much data and how many files are impacted, and possibly even see what files were damaged or destroyed. Now let's discuss the importance of data retention and archiving. By default, we retain backup data for 28 days in each version of our backup solution, but sometimes you need more. All product versions, whether integrated or standalone, support optional archiving that allows you to define custom extended retention intervals. For example, end of week, end of month, etc. Now, archiving is not scheduled by default, so you need to go in and configure and schedule it to ensure that you have recoverability of files older than the default 28 days. Imagine a use case where you recover a user's machine from ransomware and they come back to you 60 or 90 days later complaining that an important file is missed. Maybe it was still encrypted or it was never even restored. Now, regular archiving could potentially save the day by allowing the end-of-month version prior to the infection to be restored. Additionally, for users of the standalone backup product, you also have the ability to extend retention by creating custom products with their own individual retention settings per data source. This can be accessed from the Management Console under Manage Products. Finally, while defining a new custom product, you can also specify if retention is tied to calendar days or individual sessions. Session-based retention is a good choice for mobile users that may only back up once or maybe twice a week. This allows them to retain backups for 28 rolling sessions instead of 28 calendar days, which would equate to only 4 or 8 backups per month. So whether to use the recovery solution or pay the ransom, how do you decide? Well, first thing you do, stop and think. Don't make a knee-jerk reaction here and damage your ability or your customer's ability to pay that ransom before you fully verify that all the data is recoverable from the right point in time. If your system or systems are impacted, start by isolating and inventorying the systems so that you know what's at risk and what the value of the data is compared to the cost of the ransom. Identify the threat. Is it a known threat or a new one? Patch the hole if you can to prevent further outbreak. However, if you can't, don't do anything destructive on the impacted systems. That means running cleaners or anything else that might prevent you or your customer's ability to pay that ransom later, if they choose to do so. You might even want to run an additional backup if you can, so that you have a copy of the encrypted files. I've seen cases where this helped a partner out. Inventory your backups. Check your backup history to ensure that you have good backups of the right data for the impacted systems and that they are recent. Consider swapping out a hard drive or unboxing a new machine or starting up a hypervisor to do a test restore to new hardware or a virtual environment to prove that the data is actually there without impacting the physical device. If in doubt, contact us for support assistance with SolarWinds Backup. SolarWinds Backup offers flexible file, folder, volume, and application recovery to the original or an alternate location or device. Now, this comes in handy when you go to restore prior versions of encrypted files back to the newly cleaned device, or an external hard drive, or a replacement system. Virtual recovery and bare metal recovery options let you rebuild an entire server or workstation from scratch, or convert a physical backup to a virtual machine on the fly. With these options, you could replace a hard drive in an infected system and attempt to rebuild it from a presumed good point in time without the need to first install an operating system or applications, and without damaging the original system drive should you decide to revert and pay the ransom. Alternately, that same recovery point could be pointed to a local hypervisor, such as VMware or Hyper-V, and then we would attempt to synthesize a new virtual machine from your full system backup, once again being non-disruptive to the original machine. In the event of data loss or infection, the local speed vault could be very useful for recovering your data, but only if it isn't encrypted with your production data. Instead of using local volumes or USB drives, we recommend a unique, secure network share. You can use domain credentials, but worker security is considered more secure. Also, we recommend that you set unique user credentials for each share and not reuse those credentials for other shares. Don't use admin-level logins, and don't let users map drives to these shares. In fact, it's best if you prevent all but backup client access to the share. This helps to ensure that your local copy of your data remains secure and undisturbed. Now don't worry, if it does accidentally get encrypted, lost, or destroyed, then you can always rebuild it from the cloud copy of your backup, assuming that your cloud copy and your local vault are fully synchronized. Now, as we start to conclude this session, I want to remind you that ransomware is not just one of many cyber threats. It's an ever-growing business and a revenue stream for hackers, which you and your customers need to be prepared for and protected against. I encourage you to continue to use the publicity that ransomware is getting in the news to you and your customers' advantage. Educate and inform your users on the threats and begin to build out the necessary services to both protect against and recover from ransomware. So that now concludes today's presentation. I want to thank you for your time and attention. Please visit us at solarwindsmsp.com to learn more about our various solutions that help combat ransomware. And please check back regularly to see what new and exciting modules and presentations are available.